6 hours after the battle began, the last Confederacy vessel retreated into faster-than-light travel, leaving behind the wreckage of what had once been considered the galaxy's most powerful fleet. Captain Danny Foster stood on the bridge of the Colossus, surrounded by displays showing the impossible. Humanity had not merely survived first contact with a hostile alien civilization, they had won decisively. The cost of victory became clear as reports came in from across the solar system. Earth's orbital platforms had taken heavy damage, and several smaller vessels had been lost with their crews, but the planet itself remained untouched. More importantly, the alien threat had been broken so completely that survivors were fleeing, in panic rather than regrouping for another attack. Admiral Jake Morrison's voice came through the communications system with exhaustion and amazement in equal measure. "Captain Foster, this is Terra Station. I have confirmation that all remaining alien vessels have left the solar system. Repeat, the solar system is clear of hostile forces." Commander Lisa Ward was monitoring communications intercepts from the fleeing alien ships, and what she heard made her realize that humanity's victory would have consequences far beyond Earth's survival. "Captain, the alien survivors are transmitting constant reports back to their command structure. They are describing our weapons, our tactics, and our refusal to surrender. Those reports are going to reach every species in the Confederacy." Foster considered the implications as he walked to the main view screen showing Earth in the distance. The blue and green world looked peaceful from space, but he knew that everything had changed. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy not as supplicants, seeking membership in someone else's civilization, but as Apex Pre. Dr. Marcus Webb stood in front of the massive machine that had consumed 5 years of his life. The device filled half of the research lab on Luna Station, its metal frame humming with barely contained energy. Cables snaked across the floor like digital veins, connecting processors, power cores, and the strange crystalline matrix at the center that would tear reality apart. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Marcus?" asked Dr. Lisa Grant as she checked the readings on her tablet for the third time in 10 minutes. Her fingers moved nervously across the screen, highlighting the dangerous energy spikes that appeared every time they ran a test cycle. Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead despite the cool air in the lab. "We have been over this 100 times. Lisa, the math works. The simulations work. The only thing left is to actually do it." The fracture drive was unlike anything humanity had ever built before. While other alien species used jump drives that folded space in careful, controlled ways, Marcus had designed something far more aggressive. His machine would literally punch holes through the fabric of space-time itself, creating temporary wormholes that could move ships across vast distances in minutes instead of weeks. Lisa walked around the device, her boots clicking on the metal floor. She had been Marcus's research partner since they started this project, but lately she had been asking more and more questions about safety. "The quantum foam destabilization worries me, Marcus. Look at these readings from yesterday's test." She held up her tablet, showing him graphs with red warning indicators scattered across them. Marcus glanced at the data, but waved his hand dismissively. "Every breakthrough in science looks dangerous at first, Lisa. When humans first split the atom, people thought we might ignite the atmosphere. When we built the first fusion reactors, they said we would create miniature suns that would consume the Earth. Fear of progress has always held us back." The truth was that Marcus had been working on this technology for longer than anyone knew. Deep in the archives of Luna Station, he had found fragments of data from the ancient precursor race. beings who had vanished from the galaxy millions of years ago but had left behind traces of impossibly advanced technology. The precursors had somehow mastered instantaneous travel across galactic distances, and Marcus believed he had finally cracked their secret. "The unmanned probe is ready for deployment, Marcus," called out Jake Morrison from across the lab. The Admiral had arrived from Earth Fleet headquarters just 2 days ago, eager to see the first real test of the new drive system. Morrison was a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He had commanded warships in 3 different conflicts and understood better than most civilians how much this technology could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Marcus nodded and began the startup sequence. Banks of computers came alive around the lab, their screens filling with streams of data as the fractured drive began to charge its primary systems. The crystalline matrix in the center of the machine began to glow with an eerie blue light that seemed to bend and twist the air around it. "Energy levels at 60% and climbing," reported Lisa, though her voice carried clear concern. "Marcus, the spatial distortion readings are off the charts. This is creating fluctuations I have never seen before." "That means it is working exactly as designed," Marcus replied, his eyes fixed on the main control panel. Numbers cascaded across multiple screens as the drive built up the enormous amount of energy needed to tear a hole in space-time. "Initiating quantum foam destabilization in 3, 2, 1. The lab filled with a sound that was not quite a roar and not quite a whistle, something that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The crystalline matrix flared brighter, and suddenly the air in front of it began to ripple and tear like fabric, being ripped apart. Through the growing hole they could see the black of deep space, but it was not the space outside Luna Station. This was somewhere else entirely, somewhere impossibly far away. "Probe launch in 5 seconds," announced the computer system. A small unmanned spacecraft, no bigger than a car, shot through the dimensional tear and disappeared instantly. The hole in space snapped shut with a sound like thunder, leaving only the smell of ozone and the fading glow of the crystalline matrix. Marcus immediately began checking the telemetry data streaming in from their monitoring stations scattered throughout the solar system. "Probe successfully emerged near Proxima Centauri," he announced, unable to keep the excitement out of his voice. "Total travel time was 3 minutes and 42 seconds. Admiral Morrison let out a low whistle. 3 minutes and 42 seconds to travel over 4 light years. Our best jump drives take almost 2 weeks to cover that distance." He turned to Marcus with intense interest. "When can we begin trials with larger vessels, Doctor?" Lisa was studying her own set of readings, and her expression grew more troubled by the minute. "Marcus, look at this. The spatial disruption near Proxima Centauri is not dissipating. According to these sensors, there is still an active distortion field at the emergence point, and it appears to be growing slowly." Marcus frowned and checked his own instruments. The data showed exactly what Lisa had described: a slowly expanding area of twisted space-time around the location where the probe had emerged from its wormhole jump. "Probably just residual quantum effects," he said after a moment. "The field will stabilize and fade within a few days." "What if it does not?" Lisa asked quietly. "Then we will study it and learn from it," Marcus replied. "Every new technology has unexpected side effects. The important thing is that we have proven the concept works. We can move objects across interstellar distances faster than anyone thought possible." Admiral Morrison was already thinking about the military implications. "If we can move a probe that distance in under 4 minutes, we can move warships just as quickly. This changes everything, Dr. Webb. With this technology, Earth fleet could establish bases anywhere in the galaxy before our enemies even know we have left our home system. Over the next several hours, Marcus ran additional tests with smaller probes, each one confirming that the fractured drive could reliably create wormholes to specific coordinates across vast distances. The energy requirements were enormous, requiring the output of a small fusion reactor for each jump, but the speed was unprecedented. Lisa continued to monitor the growing spatial distortion near Proxima Centauri, taking measurements and running calculations. Marcus, this field is definitely expanding. It has grown by almost 10% in the last 6 hours, and the rate of expansion appears to be accelerating. Marcus looked at the data, but remained unconvinced that it represented a serious problem. We always knew there would be side effects, Lisa. The question is whether we can control and minimize them as we refine the technology. Remember, the first steam engines exploded regularly, but that did not stop humans from building better ones. As news of the successful test began to spread throughout Luna Station and then back to Earth, excitement built rapidly among the scientific and military communities. Humanity had achieved something that no other known species had managed, a form of faster-than-light travel that could cross the galaxy in hours instead of months or years. But in the depths of space near Proxima Centauri, something that should have been temporary continued to grow, slowly consuming the fabric of reality itself and sending ripples of distortion across the cosmic web that connected all things. 3 months had passed since the first successful test of the fracture drive, and the spatial distortion near Proxima Centauri had grown into something that could no longer be ignored. What had started as a small ripple in space-time now stretched across several star systems, creating gravitational anomalies that pulled asteroids from their orbits and bent light in impossible directions. Captain Ryan Foster stood on the bridge of the starship Defiance, watching the final preparations for humanity's first manned faster-than-light journey using the new technology. The Defiance was not the largest ship in Earth fleet, but it had been specially modified to house the massive fracture drive system that would carry them to the Vega system in what Marcus Webb promised would be less than 1 hour. All systems. Green Captain, reported Lieutenant Amy Chen from her position at the engineering console. The fracture drive is charged and ready for activation. Dr. Webb confirms that we are cleared for departure. Ryan nodded, but kept his eyes on the view screen, showing the space around Luna Station. He had commanded ships for 15 years and had made hundreds of jumps using conventional FTL drives, but this felt different. The energy readings from the fracture drive were unlike anything he had ever seen, and the way it seemed to make the air itself feel heavy and charged made his skin crawl. "Take us out, Lieutenant," he ordered. "Initiate jump sequence on my mark." Far across the galaxy, in the trading hub of the Altarian system, Merchant Captain Zekthul was preparing his cargo vessel for what should have been a routine hyperspace jump to the Rigel sector. His crew of 6 had made this run dozens of times before, carrying manufactured goods and rare minerals between the various alien civilizations that made up the Galactic Council's economic network. "Hyperspace entry in 30 seconds, Captain," announced his navigation officer, a young Altarian whose crystalline features reflected the blue glow of the ship's control systems. Zekthul settled into his command chair and watched the familiar countdown begin. Altarian jump drives were old and reliable technology, using carefully controlled spatial folding to move ships across interstellar distances safely. The process took several days to complete a journey that spanned hundreds of light years, but it was stable and predictable. The countdown reached 0, and Zekthul's ship entered hyperspace as it had so many times before. But this time, something was different. Instead of the smooth transition into the alternate dimension that allowed faster-than-light travel, The ship was suddenly grabbed by an invisible force and pulled violently off course. "Captain, we are caught in some kind of spatial distortion," shouted the navigation officer as alarms began sounding throughout the ship. "The hyperspace matrix is collapsing around us." Through the view screen, Zekthul watched in horror as reality itself seemed to tear apart around his vessel. The familiar blue glow of hyperspace was being consumed by expanding black tears that pulled everything toward them with irresistible force. His ship and the 5 other merchant vessels traveling with them were stretched and twisted as they fell into the growing void. The last thing Zekthul saw before his ship was torn apart was the expanding edge of a massive spatial scar that stretched across several star systems, consuming everything in its path like a cosmic cancer that fed on the fabric of space-time itself. Back in the Sol system, Ryan Foster felt the Defiance shake as the fracture drive reached full power. The crystalline matrix at the heart of the drive began to glow with that same eerie blue light that had marked all of Marcus Webb's experiments, and the air on the bridge seemed to thicken and bend around them. "Initiating quantum foam destabilization," announced Dr. Webb over the communication system from Luna Station. "Fracture drive activation in 3, 2, 1. The universe around the Defiance simply vanished." One moment they were looking at the familiar sight of Luna Station and Earth in the distance, and the next moment they were falling through a tunnel of twisted space and time that seemed to stretch on forever in all directions. Ryan felt his stomach lurch as gravity itself seemed to lose meaning, and several crew members grabbed their stations to keep from floating away. The journey through the artificial wormhole lasted exactly 53 minutes, and then, suddenly, they were in normal space again, with the bright star Vega blazing in their view screen and a system of planets spreading out before them. Ryan had never experienced anything like it. Conventional jump drives moved ships through hyperspace gradually, taking days or weeks to complete long-distance journeys. This had been like being fired from a cannon across the galaxy. "Arrival confirmed, Captain," reported Lieutenant Chen, though her voice shook slightly. "We are in the Vega system, exactly where we were supposed to emerge." But even as the crew celebrated their successful journey, the sensors began detecting massive spatial disturbances around their emergence point. Just as it had happened near Proxima Centauri, the arrival of the Defiance had torn a hole in space-time that refused to close properly. "Captain, we have a problem," called out the science officer, studying readings that showed growing gravitational anomalies throughout the system. "Our emergence has created some kind of dimensional rift, and it appears to be expanding rapidly." Ryan watched through the view screen as nearby asteroids began to change course, pulled toward the invisible distortion that marked where they had emerged from their wormhole. The rift was consuming matter and energy, growing larger and more dangerous with each passing hour. On the neutral world of Nexus Prime, where representatives from 12 different alien civilizations maintained the headquarters of the Galactic Council, emergency reports were flooding in from across known space. Counselor Zethkri, a tall crystalline being whose species had been exploring the galaxy for thousands of years, studied the data with growing alarm. The reports all told the same story. Spatial distortions were appearing throughout the galaxy, disrupting hyperspace lanes and consuming entire star systems. Ships were disappearing without a trace, pulled into expanding voids that seemed to feed on the fabric of reality itself. Trade routes that had been stable for centuries were becoming impassable as space itself became twisted and unstable. "The pattern is clear," announced Counselor Prime Rax Thul, the ancient leader of the Council whose species had evolved beyond the need for physical bodies. All of these disturbances trace back to locations where the humans have been conducting their new faster-than-light experiments. Their technology is damaging space-time itself. Ambassador Helen Carter, humanity's representative to the Galactic Council, found herself summoned to an emergency briefing just hours after the Defiance completed its historic journey. She had served as Earth's diplomatic voice for 8 years, working to build relationships with alien civilizations and secure humanity's place in the larger galactic community. "Ambassador Carter," said Counselor Zethkree, his crystalline form glowing with barely controlled anger. "We need immediate answers about your species' new FTL technology. Our preliminary analysis suggests that each use of your fracture drive is creating permanent damage to space-time that continues to spread long after your ships have departed." Helen felt her heart sink as she reviewed the data being presented to her. The evidence was overwhelming. Every location where humans had tested their new drive system now showed expanding zones of spatial distortion that were consuming matter and energy while disrupting the hyperspace lanes used by other species for interstellar travel. "I was not aware that our tests were causing these effects," she said carefully. "I will need to consult with Earth Fleet and our scientific teams to understand exactly what is happening." "You have 24 hours, Ambassador," said Counselor Prime Raxthul, his voice carrying the weight of ultimate authority. "If these distortions continue to spread, they will eventually consume entire galactic arms. This is not just a threat to human space, but to all life in the galaxy." As Helen left the Council chambers to begin emergency communications with Earth, she could not shake the feeling that humanity had stumbled onto something far more dangerous than anyone had realized. The fracture drive had given them the fastest FTL technology in known space, but at what cost? Back in the Vega system, Captain Ryan Foster watched helplessly as the spatial distortion created by their arrival continued to grow, pulling more and more matter into its hungry maw while sending ripples of gravitational chaos throughout the surrounding space. The price of crossing the galaxy in under an hour was becoming clear, and it might be more than humanity could afford to pay. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council had not seen an emergency session in over 400 years. 12 different alien species had built this massive hall on the neutral world of Nexus Prime as a symbol of cooperation and peaceful resolution of conflicts. Today, the air itself seemed to vibrate with tension as representatives from across the galaxy gathered to address a threat unlike any they had faced before. Counselor Prime Raxthul floated above the central podium, his energy-based form shifting between different colors as he addressed the assembled delegates. "We convene this emergency session to address the growing crisis caused by human faster-than-light technology. The evidence we have gathered over the past 3 months paints a picture of unprecedented danger to the stability of space-time itself." Ambassador Helen Carter sat in the human delegation section, feeling the weight of suspicious stares from dozens of alien representatives. She had spent the last 24 hours in desperate communication with Earth, trying to get answers about the fracture drive and its effects, but the responses from Luna Station and Earth Fleet had been frustratingly vague. "The data is clear," announced Counselor Zethkree as massive holographic displays filled the air above the chamber floor. "Each use of human FTL technology creates what we are calling space-time scars, permanent distortions that continue to grow exponentially after the initial jump is completed." The holographic display showed a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy with bright red markers indicating locations where spatial distortions had been detected. Helen felt her stomach sink as she realized how many red dots were scattered across the display. The fracture drive had been tested far more often than she had been told, and each test had left behind a growing wound in reality itself. "The mathematical projections are terrifying," continued Zethkri, manipulating the holographic display to show predicted growth patterns. "If these distortions continue to expand at their current rate, they will begin merging with each other within 18 months. The resulting cascade effect could destabilize entire spiral arms of the galaxy." A new image appeared, showing the Kepler 442 system, which had been home to over 3 billion sentient beings from the aquatic Delphian species. The entire star system was gone, consumed by a growing void that had appeared just 6 days earlier after a human military test in the region. 3 billion lives," said Counselor Prime Rax Thule, his energy form flaring brighter with emotion. "An entire civilization erased because humans decided to test their new toy in occupied space. How many more systems must be consumed before your species realizes the danger they have unleashed?" Helen stood slowly, knowing that anything she said would likely make the situation worse. "Honorable counselors, I want to assure you that humanity had no knowledge that our FTL technology was causing these effects. If we had known that our tests posed a danger to other species, we would have immediately suspended all research and testing." "Would you have?" asked Counselor Mirthai, an insectoid being whose chittering voice carried clear skepticism. "Your species has a documented history of pursuing dangerous technologies regardless of the consequences. Nuclear weapons, genetic modification, artificial intelligence. Humans seem to have an almost pathological need to push boundaries without considering the risks." Before Helen could respond, a new holographic figure appeared in the chamber. Dr. Marcus Webb materialized as a full-sized projection, transmitted from Luna Station where he had been working frantically to understand why his fracture drive was causing such widespread damage. "Honorable Council," Marcus said, his image flickering slightly due to the vast distance the signal had to travel. "I want to address the concerns that have been raised about my research. While it is true that the fracture drive creates temporary distortions in space-time, I believe these effects can be controlled and minimized as we refine the technology." Counselor Zethkri's crystalline form seemed to darken with anger. "Temporary distortions. Dr. Webb, we have 3 months of data showing that your space-time scars continue to grow without any sign of stabilization. The void that consumed the Kepler 442 system is now over 12 light-years in diameter and shows no signs of slowing its expansion." Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his projection. "Every revolutionary technology goes through a period of refinement and improvement. The first steam engines exploded regularly, but humans did not abandon the concept. We learned from our mistakes and built better, safer versions. Steam engines do not consume entire star systems when they malfunction," interjected Counselor Prime Rax Thule. "Dr. Webb, we need you to understand the scale of what you have unleashed. Your technology is not just dangerous to the immediate area where it is used. It is creating permanent damage to the fundamental structure of reality itself." Marcus seemed to bristle at the criticism. "With respect, Counselor, your species has been using the same basic jump drive technology for thousands of years because you are afraid to innovate. Humans have always been willing to take risks that others would not. That is how we discovered fire, how we learned to fly, how we split the atom and reached the stars." The chamber erupted in angry chittering, crystal ringing, and other alien sounds of outrage. Helen closed her eyes, knowing that Marcus had just made their situation infinitely worse by essentially calling the entire Galactic Council cowardly and backwards. "Furthermore," Marcus continued, apparently oblivious to the reaction he had caused. "I believe that the precursor race, who vanished from the galaxy millions of years ago, used very similar technology to achieve instantaneous travel across galactic distances. We are simply rediscovering principles that were once common knowledge." This revelation sent new shock waves through the assembled delegates. The precursor race was legendary throughout the galaxy, an ancient civilization that had achieved impossible technological heights before vanishing without a trace. Most species regarded them with a mixture of awe and terror, since their abandoned installations occasionally malfunctioned in ways that sterilized entire worlds. "You are basing your research on precursor technology?" asked Counselor Prime Rax Thule, his energy form now pulsing with what Helen recognized as extreme agitation. "Dr. Webb, there is a reason that race disappeared. Most xenoarchaeologists believe they destroyed themselves through reckless experimentation with forces beyond their understanding." Marcus waved his hand dismissively. "That is pure speculation. There is no evidence that the precursors destroyed themselves. They may have simply evolved beyond the need for physical existence or moved on to other dimensions or galaxies. The point is that they achieved mastery over space-time in ways that we are only beginning to understand." The debate continued for hours, with Marcus defending his research while the Council presented more and more evidence of the damage it was causing. Whole trade routes had become impassable as expanding voids consumed the hyperspace lanes used by conventional FTL drives. Colonial worlds were being evacuated as spatial distortions approached their star systems. Finally, Counselor Prime Rax Thule called for order and presented the Council's ultimatum. "Dr. Webb, Ambassador Carter, the Galactic Council votes unanimously to demand an immediate and permanent moratorium on all human faster-than-light research using space-time manipulation technology. You have 72 hours to convince your government to comply with this demand." Helen felt her heart racing. "And if Earth refuses this ultimatum, then the Council will have no choice but to enforce compliance through economic sanctions and, if necessary, military intervention," replied Rax Thule. "We cannot allow your species to continue destabilizing the galaxy through reckless experimentation." Marcus scoffed at the threat. "Earth fleet has fracture drive technology. We can deploy warships anywhere in the galaxy faster than your conventional forces can respond. If you want a war, you will find that humanity is far better prepared for it than you might expect." The silence that followed Marcus's words was deafening. Helen realized that her colleague had just threatened the entire Galactic Council with humanity's new FTL capability, essentially declaring that humans could strike anywhere in the galaxy without warning. "Dr. Webb," said Counselor Prime Rax Thule slowly, "you have just confirmed our worst fears about your species. You view this technology primarily as a military advantage rather than a tool for exploration and peaceful development. This makes the situation even more urgent." As the emergency session concluded, Helen found herself escorted to a secure communication facility where she could contact Earth directly. She knew that she had 72 hours to convince President Nicole Adams and Earth Fleet Command to abandon the most significant technological breakthrough in human history. The alternative was a war against 12 alien civilizations, fought with weapons that could literally tear apart the fabric of reality itself. Helen began composing her message to Earth, knowing that the next few days would determine whether humanity would join the galactic community as partners or face them as enemies in a conflict that could destroy the galaxy itself. President Nicole Adams stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of her office in Geneva, looking out at the city lights while she considered the most difficult decision of her presidency. The emergency message from Ambassador Helen Carter had arrived 6 hours ago, along with detailed recordings of the Galactic Council's ultimatum and their 72-hour deadline. They want us to abandon the greatest breakthrough in human history because they are afraid of a little turbulence in space, said Admiral Jake Morrison, pacing back and forth across the presidential office like a caged predator. Madam President, this is exactly the kind of alien intimidation we have been preparing for. They see that we have developed technology superior to theirs, and now they want to force us back into a position of weakness. Nicole turned away from the window to face the Admiral and the small group of advisors she had summoned for this emergency meeting. Jake, they are not talking about a little turbulence. According to their data, our fracture drive tests have already consumed several star systems and killed billions of sentient beings. Aliens, Morrison replied dismissively. Madam President, we cannot allow other species to dictate what technologies humanity can or cannot develop. If we give in to their demands now, we will never be treated as equals in the galactic community. They will always see us as junior partners who must ask permission before making any significant advances. Dr. Lisa Grant, who had been flown in from Luna Station just hours earlier, cleared her throat nervously. Madam President, if I may offer a scientific perspective on this situation, the data from the Galactic Council matches our own observations. The space-time distortions created by the fracture drive are not dissipating as Dr. Webb originally predicted. They are growing exponentially, and we have no way to stop or reverse the process. Morrison whirled to face her. Dr. Grant, are you seriously suggesting that we should abandon our most significant military advantage because of theoretical concerns about space-time stability? The Council fleet could arrive at Earth within weeks if we show any sign of weakness. Admiral, I am suggesting that we might have accidentally created a technology that could destroy the galaxy, Lisa replied, her voice steady despite the intimidating presence of the military officer. Every time we use the fracture drive, we create permanent damage to the fabric of reality. If we continue, the cumulative effect could trigger a cascade that consumes everything. Nicole Adams had not reached the presidency by avoiding difficult decisions. She had spent her entire career making choices that others were afraid to make, from her early days as a military pilot through her rise in politics. But this decision felt different from anything she had faced before. What is the current status of our fracture drive program? She asked. Morrison smiled grimly. We have 12 warships equipped with the new drives, and Luna Station is producing enough drive cores to equip our entire battle fleet within 6 months. More importantly, we have identified strategic targets throughout alien space where we could establish forward bases before they even know we have launched an attack. And if we refuse the Council's ultimatum, then we launch Operation Breakthrough tomorrow morning, Morrison replied without hesitation. 12 simultaneous fracture drive jumps to establish military bases in key systems throughout the galaxy. By the time the aliens realize what has happened, we will have positioned ourselves to defend Earth from any retaliatory strike. Lisa Grant looked horrified. Admiral, 12 simultaneous jumps would create massive space-time damage across multiple sectors of the galaxy. The combined effect could trigger the kind of cascade reaction that the Council is warning us about. Dr. Grant, your concerns are noted, Morrison said coldly. But this is a military decision, not a scientific one. If the aliens want to threaten Earth, they will discover that humanity is prepared to fight for our independence. President Adams walked back to her desk and activated the secure communication system that would connect her directly with Luna Station. Dr. Marcus Webb's image appeared on the main screen, looking tired and frustrated from days of defending his research against increasingly vocal criticism. "Dr. Webb," she said, "I need your honest assessment of the fracture drive technology. Is there any validity to the Council's claims that continued use could destabilize the galaxy?" Marcus ran his hands through his hair before answering. "Madam President, every revolutionary technology has unexpected side effects that must be studied and addressed. The Council is essentially asking us to abandon our research just when we are on the verge of understanding how to control and refine the process." "That is not what I asked you, Doctor," Nicole replied firmly. "Could continued use of the fracture drive destroy the galaxy or not?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "The mathematical model suggests that there is some risk of cascade effects if too many drives are used simultaneously in the same general region of space. But the probability of such an event is extremely low, and the potential benefits of the technology far outweigh the theoretical risks." Admiral Morrison nodded approvingly, but Lisa Grant stepped forward with her tablet showing new data from the monitoring stations. "Dr. Webb, this is not theoretical anymore. The spatial distortions from our tests 3 months ago have now merged into a continuous void that stretches across 17 light-years. The expansion rate is accelerating, not slowing down." "Temporary fluctuations," Marcus replied, though he looked less certain than before. "The important thing is that we have achieved something no other species has accomplished. We have mastered instantaneous travel across galactic distances. With proper research and development, we can solve any remaining technical issues." President Adams made her decision. "Admiral Morrison, you are authorized to proceed with Operation Breakthrough, but I want constant monitoring of all space-time effects, and I want the option to abort the mission if conditions become too dangerous." Morrison smiled with satisfaction. "Thank you, Madam President. I will begin final preparations immediately." As the meeting broke up, Lisa Grant remained behind, looking troubled. "Madam President, I hope you will reconsider this decision. I have been studying the precursor ruins that Dr. Webb has been using for his research, and I believe there may be reasons why that ancient race disappeared." "What kind of reasons, Dr. Grant?" "The precursor installations we have discovered all show signs of massive spatial distortions that occurred millions of years ago. It is possible that they destroyed themselves by pushing space-time manipulation technology beyond safe limits. We may be about to repeat their mistakes." Before Nicole could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the government complex. Admiral Morrison's voice came over the communication system with urgent news. "Madam President, our long-range sensors have detected a massive alien fleet approaching the edge of the solar system. The Galactic Council is not waiting for their deadline to expire. The Council fleet was larger than anything humanity had ever seen, consisting of hundreds of warships from a dozen different species. At its center flew the massive dreadnought, Harmony's Edge, a vessel over 3 kilometers long that served as the flagship of the Council's military forces. "Sir, the alien fleet is maintaining position just outside the heliopause," reported Captain Steve Parker, from the bridge of the Earth Fleet Command ship stationed near Pluto. "They are not advancing into the system, but they are clearly prepared for battle." Admiral Morrison studied the tactical displays showing the positioning of both fleets. The Council forces significantly outnumbered Earth fleet, but they were using conventional FTL drives that required days or weeks to move between star systems. With the fracture drive, human warships could appear anywhere in the galaxy within minutes. "Admiral, we are receiving a communication from the alien flagship," reported the communications officer. Morrison nodded. "Put it through." The image of Counselor Prime Rax Thule appeared on the main screen, his energy-based form pulsing with controlled anger. "Admiral Morrison, the Galactic Council is prepared to use force to prevent your species from continuing to destabilize the galaxy. We are offering you one final opportunity to comply with our ultimatum." Morrison stood straighter, projecting the confidence and determination that had made him one of Earth Fleet's most successful commanders. "Counselor, humanity does not respond well to threats. If you want a war, you will discover that we are better prepared for it than you might expect." "Admiral, you do not understand the forces you are dealing with," Rax Thul replied. "Your fracture drive technology is not just a weapon of war. It is a weapon against reality itself. Every time you use it, you risk triggering a cascade that could consume the entire galaxy. Then I suggest you withdraw your fleet and leave us alone to develop our technology in peace," Morrison said. "Operation Breakthrough launches in 1 hour, and there is nothing your conventional forces can do to stop it." As the communication ended, Morrison turned to Captain Parker with grim determination. "Send the signal to all fracture drive-equipped vessels. Operation Breakthrough is authorized to proceed. In 1 hour, humanity will establish forward bases throughout the galaxy, and the aliens will learn that Earth is no longer a world they can intimidate."